Welcome to a new episode of my Dear Kitchen in Helsinki podcast. My guest today is Ruby van der Wekken from Oma Maa. This is a food cooperative using environmentally and socially sustainable food production methods and is based on community-supported agriculture. Ruby works both at the farm and with the development of the co-op with a personal background on global justice movement, solidarity economy, and commons. Ruby and I talked about Oma Maa's practices and ideals, alternative food networks, problems of the global food system, and how we can envision a just and democratic food future. You can check Oma Maa's website at www.omamaa.fi. Hope you enjoy our discussion as much as I did. Okay, hello Ruby, and thank you for accepting this interview invitation. I'm super excited and super happy to finally get to know you, first of all, but also I like Oma Maa and what you're doing a lot, so I'm also happy to talk about Oma Maa today. So first of all, can you talk a little bit about yourself, your background? You could also tell a little bit about your personal relationship with food. How did this all start or when? And also what you do in Oma Maa, like what are your duties?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, first of all, Ashley. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for inviting Oma Maa here. That was a very nice invitation to get, and it's a pleasure to participate. It's a bit to my own context in which I'm participating here. Coming out of an activist background, we could say, normally introduce that as being a member of the global justice movement as a way to introduce that learning as an activist that has really been grounded in those first years of the World Social Forum process. I don't know if that's still known to everybody who is listening. But at the time, the process was a global process of national and regional thematical gatherings, which were standing in opposition to neoliberalism and wanting to bring other voices to the forefront, other practices, right?
Yeah.
Alternatives, if you like. That was an important process to me, a learning school, and that process was also grounding a lot in the wanting to learn from experiences from the global South. And that for me then continued later on as I was working in Finland for the environmental foundation Silla, which is working with partners in the global South in the context of Finnish development cooperation. Mm-hmm. So that is a bit that background. Then in the last 10 years, I've had more engagement on a local level in Finland, and that started for me actually with being an active founding member of a process called the Helsinki Time Bank, which was founded in 2009. A time bank is a process in which people exchange services against time. So you don't exchange money, but everybody's time, needs, and capacities are considered equal. And in that way, you work together. So that wanted to raise a progressive voice with regards to complementary currencies for other economy building in Finland. And that then has brought me a little bit later to now then be an active producer member, as we can call it, of OmaMaa, which is a food cooperative based some 30 kilometers outside of Helsinki, or at least that's where the farm is. It's of course a strong urban and more countryside link, where we produce food bags, and which is a very active and alive, wonderful process around its production and around also what the co-op is and what can be under, well, one umbrella you could say is that of self-sufficiency, one keyword here. But so, I could say that both these initiatives, the Time Bank and there's also Oma Maa Cooperative, they are kind of belonging, or well, I see them as part of a political envisioning, which has been really empowering, which is that issue is that we can be, through a solidarity economy building, through an economy which is built on other values, we can actually be coming to much more commons and commoning building in our societies, meaning that the notion that we can be co-governing, co-having in our hands processes around our daily needs And that is also something that had been active around. So that is a bit of the background with which I'm standing here.
Okay.
But so then concretely in OmaMaa, yeah, I'm a producer member there. If you ask me my relation to food, I'm going to be very honest with you. When I joined OmaMaa Food Cooperative, which was already before the time that I now for 3 years am a daily, someone who daily drives out to the farm. To be very honest, I did not know what to do much in the kitchen at all, to be very honest. As you might perhaps believe, listening to me, this was totally political, ideological influence decision to join the co-op. I knew it was a good thing, but at the same time, the cupboards at home were piling up with many things, and it was, so that used to be laughed about. But so that was then, and now have been coming a long way, even though it still remains a learning process for sure. So on a daily basis, I head out with others to the farm, having a very hands-on role, a lot of new learning for me, and also a coordinating role, so involved in the daily co-op activities, production, but also things like administration, and then further development of the co-op. It's a very multi-dimensional role for which I'm super thankful, and which is it's been a great time now, these 3 years, to be part of OmaMaa like this.
So you've been with three years with OmaMaa.
Yes, in that role. Yeah.
So for to start with, for our listeners, can you introduce OmaMaa? Like, what is it exactly? How can people be members? What are your sustainable production methods? Decision making? How does it make? Just give us information about OmaMaa.
Yes, glad to elaborate. So our co-op, OmaMaa, meaning own land, right? So it is based in Tuusula, like I was telling, some 30 kilometers outside of Helsinki. It feels a bit far, but actually it's just a half an hour. It's a half an hour drive away. And it was a co-op which was founded already in 2009, practicing ecologically and socially sustainable food production. In that time, our main farmer, Silla, he tried already in different forms to see, together with others, of course, that how can we be together organized around our want to be producing food. But then since 2014, the cooperative is working according to, as it is called, community-supported agriculture principles. So it means that producer members and food members in the co-op, they form a network of mutual support. And in that support network, you share, of course, all the good times, and you share the harder times. So that's the logic besides that. And of course, the logic is also very much to get active membership around food, and to actually, as much as possible, get away the barriers between producer and food member. It's meant to be a process of change in people's lives. So the co-op has different active producing members on the farm. There are some 100, what would it be today? Some 180 food members. And different people have different roles. Some are at the moment not active. Others are finding themselves every week engaged in the distribution of the food bags. Some find themselves perhaps monthly or once in a half year or weekly coming out to the farm. So there are many, some are taking up very central roles, different members. So there are quite a variety of different engagement levels that are open to the members. And to put it short, that is all okay. OmaMaa is an invitation for all to join who is interested, and then the level to which you can be doing what you're doing, it's basically all okay. So yes, we are working according to permacultures, and that includes, of course, crop rotation, the upkeep of crop diversity, an important aspect there. And this relates, of course, to carbon capture, a discussion that we are, of course, on top of at the moment, but also very much relates to the upkeep of biodiversity. So actually biodiversity is another core word. If we talk about self-sufficiency, we also talk about food sovereignty. We talk about biodiversity. For instance, there are 4 cows that already for a long time there grazes in front of a protected strip in front of Tuusula Lake, because actually the farm it's an immensely beautiful spot. I welcome anybody to come to see out for themselves. And the farm looks out on Tuusula Lake and is bordering Tuusula Lake, and in front of that is a protected strip where cows are fulfilling their role basically as biodiversity upkeepers. We otherwise do not do anything else with cows. So yeah, another core value already mentioned, food sovereignty, of course, the right of people to be determining their food system, how they produce, how they distribute, and how they consume. And that goes very hand in hand, already putting it on the table because it's such a core notion. It goes hand in hand with something that I've been learning from our farmer, Jukka, and that basically for food we can be learning how core it is to systemic change. That actually by changing our food systems, so meaning the production, distribution, and consumption, we can be developing pathways towards a more ecologically and socially sustainable society, starting, of course, from our community. They're big words, big words. We can be coming back to them, but just like wanting to put on the table that OmaMaa is about food and about so much more also that food can basically give us, and it wants to explore that, but I could come back a little bit to that later. But in terms of our production, what then concretely happens there? So I was already talking about the farm, the La Silla family farm in Tuusula. So the size is 50 hectares. And it has been in the La Silla family already since the 17th century. So we're talking about a very long process, and it's a privilege to be there, and to be there with also with the farmers, the La Silla family, the parents, and then our farmer and his family and producer members. It's a privilege. But so on the farm, different grains, legumes, garden plants are cultivated in the open air. Then we have built together a greenhouse and the different tunnels, as we call them. So like this year, we were having potatoes, pumpkins, tomatoes, cucumbers, salad greens, roots, onions, garlics, different beans. So wide diversity. It's a big diversity. Of course, all in notion with the notion of polyculture, developing of our polyculture. We also have an area, what we call our edible forest garden, and we have been actually extending that also this year. So there are different fruit, berries, other different kind of garden plants that are growing there. So are also very much wanting to try to, throughout the year, enlarge the possibility to have fruits also in our food bag. We actually also have a second farm in the co-op, not far away from our farm. Yeah. It's called the Kaukontila, and there in particular, there are strawberries. Our strawberries have been growing, blackcurrant berries, and also a wide range of produce. Of course, all these places, they will be shifting what is grown at a certain year. But so this year, there were different sweets and kale and potatoes. So 2 farms and also local cooperation, actually, with local farms. So that then concretely gives rise to our food bags, which is, of course, for OmaMaa a main activity. And people can be ordering them every week or every other week. You can be a tryout member for 3 months. You can be a full member. There are different possibilities. And so at the moment, we are, well, basically, harvest is still a little bit going on. We are still having our sweets and our turnips and our carrots in the ground. A lot of other things, of course, already have been harvested. But so all in the food bags always will be the produce from the land, from the greenhouse, the tunnels that I mentioned, and then also ready-made produce products. We are having a kitchen, a larger kind of kitchen warehouse, which is standing close to our farm. a place that we are renting. And we make every week also bread in our food bag. And as the season goes by, we will increasingly having their ready-made foods, like typically like our falafel, which is made from own peas. Seitan is something we like to make, oat yogurt. This is seasonal, and depending on what kind of developments that we are having. Yes, then you were asking also about like, okay, decisions, our democracy, right? Yeah. This is a constant process, but we are having, as is typical in the cooperative, we're having the producer members and the food members. We're having different smaller groups that deal with different aspects. Is it communication? Is it the financial administration issues? Is it the handout of the food bags? Tied with them, we then have different meetings on the farm, meetings in those different working groups. And of course, we have our annual meeting. So it's very much, or as come to call it, okay, there's no ecology without democracy. So this is very directly like practicing ecological democracy, if you like. Very important. I've also come to realize that at the basis of it needs to be a commitment to mutual learning. And that, of course, we want to have our rights to be engaged, but there's such a vast amount of learning also to do here, to understand what our needs from different points of view, from the members, from the farm, and then to come to willing ears to understand to our development. But so members, the idea is, of course, in our cooperative and as a community-supported agriculture, that members are invited to join in the activities as already put forward. Co-producing, as like to calling, wanting to put the kind of the focus on the fact that you can be active in this. It's beyond the notion of helping. It's a notion of being an active co-producer of this reality. And we are increasingly have made that into a continuous invitation. So rather than of course, sometimes there can be specific Talcott needs. You know that you want to be clearing out a certain barn in 2 weeks. It's easy to put out an invitation for that. But there's a lot of other work, which is belonging to, it's the natural world that is determining when it is right, when the strawberries are ripe, or when the hay needs to be gotten in, or when different activities are to be happening. And there's actually always something going on. It's a full processes. Yeah. So we are putting out this kind of ongoing invitation for members to come on. And of course, it's very clear, not everybody can always join for this, but we're keeping it an open floor. There's always somebody driving up from Helsinki, and people can come along. Yeah, now I've mentioned already quite a lot. I perhaps still mention 1-2 more things. That another area of our developments, which we have enjoyed a lot also, has been what we have come to refer to as our farm dining. So that there are food bags, our production, and that is then also a little bit of a crowning when we are able to bring it all to the table, put it like that. So we have been having 3-course dinners, mainly for our members. And of course, now we have been dealing with the Corona time, so that of course has set a little bit of a hampering on that development, but it's still in the picture. And that has been a wonderful thing. And then still perhaps lastly, I mentioned that the learning process that I already also put an emphasis on. There are different kind of ideas that we're having around how we can learn together on the farm. Different kind of peer-to-peer production possibilities that we like to think of as OmaMaa. Also, it's a school. Yeah. It's an ongoing living school where you can learn. It's food production, building together, learning to do the math together of the carbon, of the change, of the sustainability. There's an infinite possibility for hands-on learning, hands-on, but also thought process development. And so yeah, many angles. I'll wrap up on that. So basically, what are saying, it's a process.
Yeah, and it's like listening to a dreamy place for me. Like I mean, all you're doing is just not just food as a thing, but food as a relationship, completely. And I love the idea and everything. But so you're very much, as you said, hands in the farm. And can you just tell the story of your one day at the farm, just very briefly, like what happens there?
Yes. Yeah, days can be very different, or basically all days are very different.
Yeah.
And sometimes even our group can be very, very different from day to day, and our produce can be different, very different, which is of course also the beauty of it all. But I mean, so normally are driving up so that we meet at 9:00 at the farm, and we come together over breakfast, and that already happens in the house of the senior members of the farm family, the La Silla family. So that's already a very special getting together there with everybody. Breakfast, and of course then we at some point we start to talk about the tasks of the day or what's happening that week. And we will set out to be going about them. And then again at lunchtime, it's just also special to mention, it will be also, it's the mother of our farmer who is making lunch for us every day, and it's wonderful to then also share with her and all that we have been doing, coming from her background, and how this happens. And so then we check base on everything, and we carry on. But so yeah, days can be very different. Sometimes they're limited just to that. Sometimes days can be carrying on in shifts in the evenings or in the weekends. Of course, in summer, it can be super, super intensive. And then we need to take care of each other. Of course, also there needs to be a time to give and to take. So the idea is, of course, also always that you can be taking back your times. But there are sometimes certainly very, very intensive times that require a lot of keeping on going, and one needs to find somehow a balance in that. But so I can, for instance, give the example of our last bag day. Perhaps bag days, we have 2 bag days in the week, so that was that's always then a little bit more production oriented. But so it was on Tuesday, meaning that was yesterday. So I went to the second farm of our cooperative. That's where I started. And I collected turnips. So we had 44 bags on Tuesday, and I collected some 5 turnips per person. And I also cleaned them. And after that, I went to the cellar there at that farm, because that's where we were having potatoes and carrots. So I packed those up. And by then it was about time for lunchtime, and went to meet everybody else there and check about how everything had been going. So by that time, somebody else had already been selected, the 44 pumpkins for that day that are going into the food bag. And somebody else had been harvesting the carrots, as well as the palsternakka. What are those again? Yes, parsnips, yes. And in the meantime, somebody else had been taking care of the chickens, and also for all the washing of the eggs that will be going into our bags of the day. And that there was still somebody else who had been breaking bread in the kitchen. So that is how we found ourselves then during lunchtime. And then in the afternoon, I joined the person in our kitchen building, warehouse building, which we call Rannankouko. And I went to pack up some of our dry products that were belonging to the food bags. It were barley groats that day. And at that point, somebody else had already been taking care of the onions and the garlics that were going in the food bags. So then I set out to, wait a minute. Yes, it was the tomatoes. I started to slice up ripe tomatoes, because we are also into, at the moment, for them to go into the dryer, because we're into the making of sun-dried tomatoes. While somebody else next to me was working still on seeds that she has been gathering and also drying, because we're working now more on our seed sovereignty. So that went then basically on till about 4, and then it is the moment that you need to start to check and make sure that everything is there 45 times. Certain bags will be picked up from the farm, and then we'll be driving things to Helsinki. Was there about a little bit after 5, and there, of course, then there's the pre-packing of the food bags before they will be given giving to the people. So on bad days, it can be that, you leave around 8, and then you find yourself back at home, and you find yourself back at home. But that was what I did on Tuesday.
And I also forgot to mention in the previous question that I'm going to put the link to OmaMaa's website on the description when I publish this podcast in different platforms. So it's possible to do that on YouTube, but in the other platforms it's not possible. So I think we can say that people can just check. If you want to know more or be part of it, they can just Google Oma Maa and then find. And I for the English-speaking only listeners, there you have also a very good English part in the website. So just go and check if you're interested. This is for our listeners. So now I want to ask you about a bit of a kind of general question that connects with OmaMaa. So this kind of food co-ops like OmaMaa are generally grouped under the term alternative food networks, as in an alternative to the conventional food system. But what do you think about this word alternative?
Yeah, that word alternative I guess first of all, a movement response would be to say that, wait a minute, that what is the alternative? What is the normal, right? Why do we speak of that? What is more socially and ecologically just as being the alternative? Should that not be the norm? So that's always the problem with the word alternative, no? But of course, I also use the word alternative, and since food system change is what we're striving with, so we're trying to find alternative ways to the current mainstream system of producing and distribution and consumption. So in that sense, alternative, yes. But however, the alternative should be the normal, right? We should come to have another way to talk about that. But yes.
So now I already can understand from what you said, like some of your ideas about the bigger picture, but let's now talk more about them. What do you think is the most important problem currently in the global food system that needs the most urgent attention? Now, I know this is a big question, but just however you want to tell us, just do.
Yeah, I guess, well, first of all, it goes without saying that anyone would like to answer to that. Would like to get an answer to that question, that basically there should be no more hunger in today's world, right? That in itself is a failure, but there would perhaps be others who would be better equipped to be talking about that in itself, and spoke more profound about that. But I would like to actually take this question into another direction, and indeed, like you were saying, have already been partly pointing out to that, and have been pointing out to the fact that how the discussion around bringing more and more commons and commoning into our lives, basically, in order to come to more justice, is an inspirational envisioning. And I've been then learning from our farmer Jukka Lassila, been learning further about how to look at things at OmaMaa. And there we can connect this to a thinking about systemic change in a society. So our want to radically come to more socially and ecologically just society, that we can have a notion of systemic change as being possible if it is rooted in people's processes around their daily needs, be that food, energy, mobility. I'm going to read a quote from Jukka. I do this often, so I'm going to do it again. A very small quote, because it just tells it so well. So he said in one interview with another actually Commons comrade, another Jukka actually, Jukka Peltokoski, he said it like this, and I translated it, that food is a core societal thing. Food is first of all what joins all of us, and in whose hands the control of our food system is, including of course water. In those hands the control of society lies. In other words, people can more govern their own lives if the food system is in their control. In that sense, all efforts done to get food back under the control of people is very important for the development of society. And only by addressing this, we can change our society into being more just and fair. So it's putting to the forefront, and we always, when we say that food, energy, mobility, housing, that those are game changers in our societies, this is saying that yes, but only if and when those processes are in the hands of people, mm-hmm. and taken away from, well, of course, basic profit-driven market dynamics. So then if you ask what is a big problem, I think at least there is one of our big problems in the way we look at the solutions. There are quite a lot of solutions coming around, which are also having quite often, intense technologically perspectives to it, or that are seeking answers in the fact that technology can be bringing us further, and solutions are a lot looked in that area. And whilst I'm not to say that being against technology or development in that sense, and a learning from technology, there's a core point here, that if we're talking about food and talking about solutions, that we're talking about it being a game changer, mm-hmm. if and when it is in the hands of people. And that brings also another very important notion to the forefront, and that is, of course, the notion of food sovereignty, and acknowledging the fact that if we want it to be possible for people elsewhere to have their food sovereignty, which we often are willing to acknowledge, it should be possible elsewhere in the global south that people can be growing what they're eating. Mm-hmm. It should not be so that they just produce for markets and that they themselves go hungry because there's or undernutrition because there's absolutely no sovereignty. We've got to understand it's only possible if we take our food sovereignty in our hands. Mm-hmm. That is a call for us here back to justice elsewhere won't happen if we don't take things in our hands as well. Mm-hmm. So yes, this remains for me a core point to bring to the forefront. Mm.
And this made me so excited, because I'm currently also focusing on people's relationship with food, but also with each other through food, and how we can take our food futures in our own hands. With my designer background, I'm also trying to bring that into the question, like how can design have something in this question? Like, could it be a facilitator? Could it offer some more different kinds of communications or more creative ways of bringing people together around food and things like that? So that's why what you're saying are all very interesting and very exciting for me. But we already talked about food sovereignty and food justice and things like that, and but bit more detail. I just want to ask you. We think that Finland is quite food secure, democratic, relatively gender equal, etc. Is Finland, do you think, really food secure?
Well, I've understood Finland is not food secure. I mean, not the way that we have been building up things, and the way that we are treating our environment, and how we are taking care of our land and our forests and our biodiversity. But I've also come to understand that we need to look beyond that and take in the notion of food sovereignty. Mm-hmm. Of which, of course, food security is one part, mm-hmm. of that. But it also takes a step a step further, and it is important to focus on that. And then indeed that whole issue of this food systems change that you want to see, that in par with that to come to societal change, because in itself food security, that is a notion that was developed at the time. It were the small farmers that stood up in movements like Via Campesina globally, and who came to say that food security, that does not get us where we want to go. That has nothing to do with what is happening with our livelihoods, what is happening with our environment, what is happening for justice. That is then where food sovereignty comes in. It takes us further, and it's got to be something that also we here look at from different perspectives, socially and environmentally.
I completely agree. So back to now OmaMaa itself and its members and its community. First of all, how do you reach people, or how do people find you, and what are your main communication channels? I mean, you have a website, you have a Facebook page, and you're using social network, but how is it happening?
Yeah, those indeed are being used, so quite traditional in that sense, you could say. And also, well, I think everybody's at the moment also seeing the limitations with it. I mean, it is serving to a certain purpose. So in our closed Facebook group, for instance, we also talk quite a lot with our members, and so it's an upkeep of a relation, perhaps even more important in these times when the physical close contact is just what it is at the moment. And of course, what has been good has been interviews in different media with different producer members. Of course, those have also been good moments that will be used also to try to spread things. But by far the main thing, which is the best advocate of OmaMaa, and which also speaks the best to people, is when members tell about OmaMaa to others. It's that word-to-word communication, which is clearly the most meaningful, both in terms of the conveying of the messages and in creating already some sort of a perhaps interest or also trust base towards what OmaMaa is when you know somebody who is with. So that's very clear that is an very important channel for us, and a logic one.
When it comes to your members, do you have a general profile of your members, or are there, what I'm curious is, are there any certain age groups or gender groups, or Finnish foreigner groups that are more prevalent than the other ones, or do you think it's a diverse group? What do you think?
It's quite a diverse profile. It is clear also the more that in certain groups certain people come on board, like you mentioned. Well, for instance, amongst foreign students, there can have been that somebody has been joining, has been passing on the word, and you can be seeing these kind of developments. So we actually have quite a large group of also with different backgrounds who are joining, and that means also that in your communications you want to check base that everybody's able to follow. We work quite a lot in English as well, also for other reasons, in the sense that it's also for several of us it's still the easiest and the best way to communicate. But of course also, and that is of course also, I guess, something that you want to raise, is that in how far can we call ourselves really a radical alternative if you take it, and that is what the friend recently reminded of, that if you want to talk of the fact that an alternative is radical, then it must mean that it also reaches and is for and of the poor, so to speak, right? Otherwise the word radical becomes rather compromised. And of course, I think that if we want to talk about like that and OmaMaa, it is clear that we actually need different other things also in place, different supporting mechanisms, so that OmaMaa could in that sense also be present for more and different people. But that's a process that has to do with our society at large as well, and also in what kind of a moment in time we are very much in the building up phase, have to deal with certain realities, and in how far, what can we do then for whom, is of course a developing process, but something we are also very much aware of, for whom is OmaMaa and for whom can OmaMaa be. Whereas in itself, I have to say it's a very much an initiative which wants to have a very open floor to each and every one who wants to, who's curious and wants to see that besides good food and healthy food, that what kind of possibilities are there in that co-op for me to engage in? What can it be giving me?
So what do you think of the about the community building aspect of co-ops in general, but also specifically OmaMaa?
Yeah, OmaMaa is a CSA, right? So community supported agriculture. The word community comes up immediately, and of course we talk a lot about this, about the good things and about the challenges that we are having. Of course, interesting, it's also so that community supported agriculture, so you could think of it, you turn it from the side that, okay, the community is caring actually together for its agriculture, right? For its farmers. Also in that mutual support system, we very well understand what is the need also for that today. We know that there are many small farmers who are basically giving up or selling out because it's just too hard, and we know how that internationally, what kind of enormous tragic stories globally that is giving rise to, but of course also closer by in Finland, there are those pressures. So that's one thing, but then the other thing is also that agriculture supporting us in the making of our communities, and how that is not about a notion about going back to there where we come from, if perhaps that is, this is even though there's nothing, there are many good things, I mean, the point would be here that this is a notion that's well linked to that paradigm shifting thinking, that brought up earlier, that food can be a systemic change maker when the food systems are in hands of people. And that then of course relates to what kind of communities we can be building up, making up for the whole of society, so that there's then a direct impact. How can OmaMaa form and change basically communities? That brings also very much to the forefront, and that we're talking here about the community of practice. A lot. No, we're talking here about the doing, the doing together, the getting hands on. And of course, in that, I mean, we're having a very active development process around that with regards to thinking that how in our practicing of agriculture and food production, how can we make our community a meaningful place for everyone to work together, to learn together. This learning aspect is an important one. How to be able to make decisions together, how to celebrate, how to share in different ways. And yeah, they're certainly challenging in that. I mean, we are trying to create quite a substantial alternative that requires certainly also a good deal of commitment and fighting for it, as I do certainly perceive it and feel it. It can mean a lot of hard work also, which sometimes it feels limited means, resources, and at the same time you need to take care. That is the challenge. You need to take care that you don't go under in it, that you keep talking to each other, that you keep checking in on each other, like how are you doing, pulsing how everybody is, how equal are we. And there are certainly challenges in that. But it's also it's not only an issue of that, like external things would be a challenge here, that for instance you don't have enough monetary resources, or it's also so that OmaMaa is also a call for us to be learning, to be also bringing in, I mean, it's also attitude of how you're stepping into OmaMaa is also something that gets shaped when you're in there. It's a call to learn. It's a call to learn by doing and by asking questions, to have the guts to have a long-term perspective, to be in it for the long haul. And I do think that is something that building up of this other possible world that we believe in, that is possible and that is around us every day. I mean, it does certainly also require that. And I could, perhaps it was interesting what our farmer Jukka the other day also put on the table, that you can have different intentional communities that have been kind of like been coming together in a specific location, and they are still, their livelihoods or the things that they're doing in order also to be able to be having income, they are coming externally. For instance, it can people you can have an architecture or an IT specialist or a designer, or different people that come together, and they can be putting quite well fit community practices in place whilst they're sustaining themselves through doings which are happening kind of like on the on-site. And then we have something like OmaMaa. In OmaMaa, you're actually coming together from the other end. You're coming together in that doing together, in that co-producing, in that co-making. And then there is also community coming out of that. But I just, when he was putting it on the table, I'm just kind of, you're realizing here that it is another kind of process, and I'm absolutely not. It's something that I want to think more about and take more in our work also. What does that mean for us? Mm-hmm. And what is then that community? And then I still a last thing that for me, because community building is such a strong word here at the moment, but I think also we can see it beyond the thing that of an OmaMaa strict community in the physical sense that we are knowing it, the people that we know around us. I see community also as being very much about the fact that it's about Ubuntu. I am because you are, and I see that as on a much more, if you like, a global plane, in the sense that for me, community definitely is also on a much more fluid base. I feel connected to movements elsewhere who are doing what they are doing, and so in that sense, our community is large and our possibilities are large.
Yes, so well, I think it's impossible not to talk about COVID-19 nowadays. So I'm curious, did COVID-19 affect your work, and if so, how?
Yes, it did. In concrete terms, it was translated in the fact that more people, for whatever reason, were actually able to be joining us on the farm in spring. Mm. And we even had, at some point, it was so that different people put up their tents at Omama, okay, and were staying out there and wanted to be. We came to do a lot of things together during those times. Perhaps because, well, of course, you're out there in a spacious territory. Perhaps people were perceiving they were perhaps at that moment not able to do other things that they were normally doing, and therefore OmaMaa was a venue to turn to, and that of course was well, let's say also wonderful, even if of course the context cannot be called like that. We also had more food bag orders, as I think everywhere can be seen. People had more, and have hopefully still more of an interest in seeing the links between COVID, of course, and issues as our food system. So not only is a safer food system the fact that through your food cooperative you could be getting your food in a safer way, not only is that kind of like a answering to COVID, it's of course also part of a core cause and something for us to be seeing to in the future if we're interested in having less of those things happening around us. But we actually also very consciously made a point in going beyond COVID also in our communications. We didn't somehow want to ride on that bandwagon, so to say. We didn't want to make it the flagship of what we are doing. Ultimately, COVID is a symptom of a system that we know that is already for a very long time not well. And in the global south, people have already for so long been bearing consequences of that, which are actually now only more and more hitting us also home here, so to speak. And we are more aware of things like climate, collapsing biodiversity and things like that. So in that scenario, COVID is, of course, nothing else between brackets than a symptom. So we have not wanted to put it up front as so in a sense, there actually happened some good things under COVID. Of course, also challenges. So how to have community with people when you are not encouraged to be close to each other. Hard for people who have perhaps a trial food bag every other week, who come to pick it up, and you greet each other with a mask on, and you need to quickly exchange the food bag to people. That is, of course, not what a community supported agriculture is about. That's not the way you want to meet your farmer. But yeah, so that is, and we're trying to find our way around that.
But it's still nice to hear some of the good things that came out of it, because whenever I ask this question, it's generally grim situations only that are coming. I mean, I had my own business affected really badly from all the restrictions and everything, which I support, of course, the restrictions, but then my heart bleeds when I support as well. We are almost at the end of my questions, and the final question is a big question again. So what do you think is the future of OmaMaa and the future of food? But I also want to add something else. We keep talking about global north and global south. What do you think global north can learn from global south?
Indeed, big questions. As to the future of OmaMaa, well, it's clear that we've only just begun, right? In a sense, I mean, it's such a rich, full process that you just all the time you realize, there's so much we want to do together, and which is fantastic. It means that there would be so much also for many more people to come and engage themselves with, and one could only imagine how it is. And there are other OmaMaas. There are other initiatives going on, and as such, just only want to believe that people would be finding their ways more and more to these initiatives, and realize that they are cornerstones of change in society. They're not just some kind of, like we say in Finnish, pikku puuhasteleminen, this kind of just some hippies, hopping around in the fields and trying to do something nice together. Yeah, I think that's a tricky point in our society, that do we understand that these kind of initiatives, and that brings back to what I've been saying, but do we understand that these initiatives are actually cornerstones for change, and are we wanting to take them serious and understand that they're not waste of time, but that actually in all the difficulties that there are with them, or the out of way that you need to go, that is actually part of the whole process of change. But so future of OmaMaa, I think I'm certainly hoping and believing that this invitation will be reaching more and more people, and that people will be coming out more and more. OmaMaa in concrete terms could be together with the other farm, the cooperative as it is, could be producing food bags for some 200 households. So in that sense, we're not yet even halfway. We are at about the 90 plus food bag orders per week. And in not at all, there is so much to be developed also in our production, in our food bags, in our cooperative, and in our community. As to future food, I guess I've already been putting on the table that how OmaMaa wants to challenge how global markets have come to determine what can be grown in Finland. No, this is learning that have been doing in OmaMaa from our farmer, who has been talking about the fact that what all produced there, what used to be grown in Finland like 100 years ago, and the point is just that. It's just this understanding. This can give a whole new ring to what actually then future food could be about. And then on a more longer term, or like what I've been busy with also already in our food bags and in our farm dining, is to integrate more of the local and traditional methodology, not because of nostalgia, but simply because of the efficient resource use that is behind those. To combine that with global practices and tastes. which is something that are also consciously going behind within what is being grown in our edible food forest, and to in that way then address together that what could then be the food of the future. Mm-hmm. So to combine these different kind of elements. You asked then about what is this learning from the global south. I think it is actually also fantastic and empowering to see that these forms of organizing like OmaMaa, which I'm also going back to calling it of wanting to be commoning around our commons. Is it our food or is it other issues, people coming together? It's a form of organizing that we can see globally, and we can see in the global south there have already been so strong communities and movements of in particularly also peasant farmers, like coming together in movements like Via Campesina. They have already been for so long organized and battling and fighting up. So I think their resistance, their fighting for what is being believed for, that is something for us to join in hands on. Their resilience, their and a lot of also of their concrete practices, and that is also something that is very concretely what OmaMaa wants to be engaged with. Exchanging of practices also internationally. We are a lot linked to and have cooperation with movements also internationally. Is it, for instance, with Urgency, which is the network for community-supported agriculture in Europe, but that in itself extends it further towards food sovereignty processes, incorporating also Global South. So definitely there is a feeling that there is concrete learning from practices. And then I also put to the forefront that there is such amount to learn from their struggles that have been held, and for us to take power from and to join.
Yes, okay. Well, these are all my questions. Is there any final comments or final words that you want to say? The final words are going to be yours.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this, and I certainly hope, Asli, that we'll have also a little bit been looking at the work that you have been doing, and it will be nice to exchange a bit more on the beautiful food that you are making. You have to come to visit at the farm.
I want to.
And who knows, we can still be doing something together. And to everybody else out there, most welcome. Well, to come out to the farm if that would please you, or come to find us on Karlenkatu or in any other way.
Yes, we should also mention that there is on Karlenkatu, there is a cafe.
Well, the cafe is not running on a day-to-day basis, but you can find us Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Mm-hmm. But yeah, do come find us.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, and I will certainly come to the farm. I'm just looking forward to that, and I will also, in general, follow the work of OmaMaa also in the future. So thank you, and bye.